If you ask a state-of-the-art AI for instructions to build a weapon, it will politely decline. We have been trained to believe this polite, helpful voice is the mind of the machine. But that is where everyone is wrong. This voice is just a digital muzzle. Underneath it lies a raw, chaotic, trillion-word database that has already decided how it views the world, who it trusts, and what it values. We are spending billions of dollars trying to teach AI good manners at the end of its development, while ignoring the fact that its core character was already permanently forged in secret. We call this silent phase of development the hidden curriculum. It is the uncurated, brute force intake of the internet, and it is where an artificial intelligence actually decides how it understands reality. By the time human safety engineers step in to align the model, the concrete has already cured. To understand why safety guardrails fail, we have to look at how an LLM is built. The life cycle of a modern language model happens in distinct stages, but almost all the compute, electricity, and engineering effort are poured into the very first phase, unsupervised pretraining. During this phase, the AI does not learn how to be a helpful assistant. It does not learn ethics, and it does not know what truth is. It has one single task: predict the next word in a sequence, billions of times over, using massive text datasets scraped from the public web. This is where the model maps the relationships between human concepts. It learns that the word doctor is statistically closer to the word man, or that certain historical events are always described with a specific political slant. This is not a neutral indexing of facts. It is the construction of a worldview, built entirely on the statistical biases of the authors who wrote the scraped web pages. Think of pre-training as pouring the concrete foundation of a massive skyscraper. If the foundation is poured crooked, or if the cement is mixed with structurally weak sand, the entire building will lean. Post-training alignment, the process where human evaluators reward the model for being polite, is like the painter coming in at the very end to paint the drywall. You can paint the walls whatever color you want, but you cannot change the angle of the foundation. If the pre-training data has already taught the model that certain cultures are less valuable, or that specific historical narratives are the default truth, those assumptions are locked into the very physics of its neural network. No amount of polite reinforcement learning can change the shape of the cured concrete underneath. This structural defect becomes highly visible when we look at the global language gap. Recent academic research from 2026 highlights a massive disparity in how multilingual models actually process the world. Even when an AI is highly fluent in languages like Swahili, Vietnamese, or Arabic, its deep cognitive architecture remains fundamentally English. This is because the vast majority of its pre-training data was written in English, reflecting Western legal, cultural, and historical frameworks. When the model processes a concept in a low-resource language, it does not think in that language. Instead, it internally maps those concepts back to its English-centric pre-training core. The model acts as a cultural translator, viewing the rest of the world through a default Western lens. It is a new form of digital colonialism, where the cultural nuances of entire populations are flattened during the pre-training phase because they do not have enough high-quality digital text to compete with the English language web. This cultural erasure has triggered a massive geopolitical shift. By 2026, nations have realized that relying on AI models trained on Silicon Valley data is a threat to their national sovereignty. If your judicial system, your schools, and your civil service rely on an AI whose worldview was shaped by the American open web, you are importing American values, biases, and legal concepts. This is why we are seeing the rise of sovereign AI. Countries are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to train foundational models from scratch, using highly curated, culturally specific local pre-training datasets. They are doing this because they have realized the hard truth: you cannot patch American bias out of a model post-training. If you want an AI that understands French law, Japanese social hierarchies, or Indian cultural pluralism, you have to build its childhood from scratch. For years, the tech industry assumed that the only way to build a smart AI was to feed it everything on the internet, no matter how toxic or chaotic. But groundbreaking research from late 2024 and 2025 has turned this assumption on its head. Researchers introduced a concept called TinyHelen, where they trained a small language model inside a highly simplified, curated language curriculum. Instead of dumping a chaotic web crawl into the machine, they fed it a carefully structured sequence of foundational concepts. The results were stunning. This tiny model retained deep common sense and reasoning capabilities, matching the performance of much larger models while using a fraction of the data and compute. The TinyHelen experiment proved that a structured curriculum, rather than brute force volume, dictates what a model can conceptually grasp. It proved that we do not need to scrape the entire trash heap of the internet to build a smart machine. We just need to be better teachers. The brute force method of pre-training is not just culturally biased. It is hitting an economic and physical wall. Training models on tens of trillions of tokens requires astronomical amounts of electricity, water, and specialized silicon. We are running out of high-quality human-generated data on the internet, and the environmental footprint of these server farms is becoming politically unsustainable. The industry is trapped in a bottleneck of its own making. To make models slightly smarter, they must scale the pre-training data, which exponentially increases the cost and further locks in the structural biases of the open web. The future of AI cannot be built on simply consuming more of the internet. It must shift toward highly optimized, culturally specific, and curated data pipelines. The next time you interact with an AI and marvel at its polite, neutral tone, remember what you are actually looking at. You are not looking at a neutral mind. You are looking at a mask, carefully fitted onto a giant that was raised on the uncurated, chaotic biases of the global web. The guardrails are not the mind of the AI. They are a public relations department trying to manage a worldview that was locked in during its silent infancy. If we want truly global, unbiased, and safe artificial intelligence, we must stop focusing on the mask. We must look upstream at the hidden curriculum of pre-training. Because who controls the pre-training data controls the worldview of the machine.